It's time to make some noise. Welcome to Sound Off Sports. On today's show, yes, Caitlin Clark, the mania, the phenom, she's headed to the Final Four. Is she the greatest women's college basketball player of all time? We ask you and get your thoughts. Plus, later on the show, I have a sit-down interview with Derek Carr, the QB for the Saints. We look back on his time with the Raiders and ask you how he will be remembered. That's all on Sound Off Sports. We start right now.
Make some noise. This is Sound Off Sports.
Hello, everybody, and welcome to Sound Off Sports. Thanks for joining us. We got a great show for you today. I'm joined by my producer, James Edward Barrickman IV. James, great to have you with us. So, guys, I mean, the big talk in the sports universe right now is, of course, all the mania, all the hype surrounding Caitlin Clark, and it's definitely justified after that 41-point performance. She's headed to the Final Four. We asked you guys at home how she ranks all time when it comes to women's college basketball player ever. James, what are the people saying at home?
This first one is from Jay Davis via Facebook. She says, Caitlin is in her own lane right now. She's a gem, but to reference her as the greatest of all time is silly without winning championships. Championships
matter. We're going to see what happens throughout the rest of March Madness, but she does have that record broken from, Pete Maravich, Pistol Pete. She broke that record. She's the all-time leading scorer in NCAA history, so that's pretty good for me in my book.
She absolutely is a stud, and you watch her, and it's like you're watching the women's version of Steph Curry. When has the women's game ever had a Steph Curry? She's box office. Now, is she the greatest of all time? There's an argument to be made already. She has Kelsey Plum's single-season scoring record, all-time scoring record, and as you mentioned, Pete Maravich's scoring record. So I think with the championship, it's kind of without a doubt she's number one.
We got to see what happens. What else did we hear from the Pete?
This is from Devin Sase via Facebook. Quote, I think she's proven to be the greatest scorer in NCAA history. If Iowa wins the championship, then maybe there's an argument to be made. But the greatest player of all time, I don't know if she's the best player this year. You could argue that Beckers, Watkins, or Brink are better all-around players.
No, she's the best player this year, definitely, 100%, no question. All right, what else did we get?
Yeah, Omar Boswell would agree with you here. He says, she absolutely, positively, unequivocally is.
Okay, well, it sounds like a version of Stephen A. Smith right there. Yes, I really think she is up there on the Mount Rushmore, at least at this point. People like, Reggie Miller's sister, Cheryl Miller, was a stud, Diana Taurasi. So there's a lot of players, of course, but I think that Final Four, that championship run, if she gets that title, it would be a big deal.
Absolutely. And this last one is from Jared Beck via Facebook. He says, the fact that many people, including myself, tuned in to our first ever NCAA women's game says yes. She's breaking down a big barrier in viewership.
And that's the biggest, the most critical response I think we've heard, the most important, because I think beyond basketball, it's the barriers, it's the interest that she's drumming up for women's basketball. I mean, James, when's the last time there's been so much hype surrounding and mania surrounding one person? It's almost like Beatlemania. It's the fact that everybody in the United States is collectively understanding how impressive this athlete is such a special thing. We can't agree on TV shows anymore. I mean, Succession and The Bear. Have you seen those shows, James? Those are two of the Emmy-winning shows. Have you seen them?
I have not.
Do you even know what they're about?
Nope.
Exactly. So that's the issue. In our society today, how many things as a country do we collectively understand and appreciate? Caitlin Clark is unifying this country, truly.
I am as big a Caitlin Clark fan as there is. To put a word to what she's doing, she's box office, right? We've never seen the women's game get this kind of ratings. 12.4 million watched LSU, Iowa. That's the #1 most watched women's college basketball game ever. It got higher ratings than 4 out of the 5 NBA Finals games this year. That's unheard of.
Right.
That's something we would have scoffed at. We would have laughed at it just a couple years ago, but now it's reality, and it speaks to the kind of pull that Caitlin Clark has on the game and across the sports world.
Yeah, it's very similar to Steph Curry at Davidson. And listen, this is not because of LSU and their coach and all that drama or Angel Reese. This is all Caitlin Clark related. and she's the driving force, so it's a beautiful thing. Now we have to get into a really crazy thing that happened in the sports world. It's time for Sink or Swim. We got to talk about the Bills Mafia getting whacked. Yes, they got whacked on this big trade when it comes to shipping Stefon Diggs, a bona fide #1 wideout who's had 100-plus catches in all 4 seasons with the Bills. Now he's off to this great team, this young, exciting franchise in Houston with the Texans. And I can't believe that the Buffalo Bills are just blankly giving up. Yes, I mean, this is what they're doing with a 27-year-old Josh Allen, who's a franchise quarterback in his win now mode. They've decided we're just going to give up and retool. So they got a second-round draft pick in next year's draft, okay? They still took a cap hit of $31 million on Stefon Diggs. It's incredible. That cap hit there is more than all of the Packers wide receivers combined. It's $11 million the Packers are paying for 9 wideouts. They're paying $31 million to Stefon Diggs. He's not even on the team. But this is what they've been doing all offseason long. They shipped off Leonard Floyd, Jordan Poyer, Micah Hyde, Tre'Davious White, even Mitch Morse on the O-line. All those guys are basically in their 30s, so they're trying to get younger. They're trying to retool, and basically this is an admission from Brandon Beane and all the ownership and Buffalo that they cannot compete with the Ravens, the Chiefs, as they currently are. And now we're going to see the Houston Texans. They already got Danielle Hunter opposite of Will Anderson on the D-line. They added Joe Mixon. Now they're going to add Stefon Diggs with Nico Collins, Tank Dell, Noah Brown. C.J. Stroud is going to literally be a top 3 QB this year, especially with all these weapons. I can't believe what's going on, and this is the tale of an organization that's being really run well in Houston. Nick Caserio is basically trying to maximize C.J. Stroud's window on his rookie contract. They're trying to leverage that situation, and this is going to be a great opportunity for them to compete for Super Bowl titles. And I love it. Now we know why they moved down 19 spots from the first round and made that trade into the second to kind of retool and get some more draft capital. So this is a very interesting thing. I can't believe the Bills have basically given away a guy for a second-round pick next year and taken this cap hit for a guy who's been the second most productive wide receiver in the AFC behind Tyreek Hill. Definitely a bad deal for the Buffalo Bills, and I'm sorry to the Bills Mafia up there in upstate New York. Guys, coming up after a short break, Derek Carr, the QB for the New Orleans Saints, joins me for a conversation. Stick around. Welcome back to SOS. So very exciting. We got Derek Carr, the QB of the New Orleans Saints, with us. The first question I asked him, there's a lot of changes down there in Louisiana. New OC and Clint Kubiak. Let's hear how excited he is for some of these new schemes in New Orleans.
It's going to be very different. But I feel like with our skill set and the players that we have from our quarterback room to the running backs to the O-line, tight ends, receivers, I think it fits what we do. I think it fits what we have. And I think it's a really exciting time for us. And obviously, last year was exciting. We thought we would play the last part of the season, the first part of the season like we did the last part of the season. We thought it was going to be like that the whole time, but it took us more time than we thought to get to know each other and to grow. But we went through a lot of obstacles, a lot of things. We went like this as a team. We're so close this year. And, I'm very excited about having that. Also with Clint coming in and his staff, about adding that part of, what we've already built in chemistry and the team unity in that aspect. So it's an exciting time for us, and can't wait till, April to, middle of April to get to work.
And when I was reading a stat said last year the Saints were the last team in terms of you had 77 play action plays drawn up actually. And when you see that in terms of that's the lowest in the league, is that something that you're registering throughout the season, or is it one of those, and you're like, as a team leader, as a QB, you want to say, hey, we got to implement some of these things, or is it one of those things that just gets lost in Sunday football?
No, there's, I think the last 5-6 games, I can't remember exactly off the top of my head, but last 5-6 games was probably where a majority of those play actions came from. And we started playing our best football. And so I just think it helps the O-line, it helps those guys that, they don't have to pass set and try and block these amazing, athletes on the defensive line, just in a pass set formation and pass set type of down and distance. And I think if you can run the ball efficiently and be able to play action, I think it makes it really hard on defenses because it all looks the same until about 2 seconds into the play. And I think that makes it very hard. And so I'm really excited about it, and Clint, Kubiak and, his family and his, lineage and, the whole scheme, has been very successful at this kind of system. And so I'm excited about it.
What's the biggest thing you learned about yourself? You're drafted into the league, and then in 2014, and then you're with the Raiders all these years, and then you have to make an adjustment, go to the NFC, and you got to play for a new city and new organization. What were the things you learned about yourself as you're reflecting now at the end of the season and the off season?
Yeah, that was the first for me. I had been with one organization, for almost a decade. And so going into a new place, obviously, and rightfully so, man, I was trying to take care of my family, make sure we had school was good, the church was good. My wife has, things she needs to do and friends and all this kind of stuff. And that took longer than we thought, like just trying to figure out the way of life and trying to do all those things. And, I actually felt like it was a disservice to my teammates, because I felt I was spending so much time trying to make sure that they're okay, which I would do again. I'm taking care of my family, but you learn through that process while, doing things with the teammates and all that kind of stuff. Once time was freeing up and stuff like that, man, I was going to dinners. We were doing this. We were getting to know each other. We were doing, more than just the hours that were allotted, and,
Right.
and I found out that, that right there is the glue for any team. And so the last half of the year, we were doing that so much, and it showed in our play and it showed in our brotherhood, in the way that we cared about one another. So I'm excited that we have all those things already set up, for the family. That, there's going to be a lot of sacrifice that I'll be making for my teammates, and that time and just making up that time and building those relationships.
It's a cool thing. A few last questions. One, you were a second round pick. Your brother, obviously a top pick. A lot of QBs in this year's upcoming draft. Guys like Caleb, JJ McCarthy, Penix. Jaden. All these different guys. Drake May. What have you learned? If they were going to give you a phone call and say, hey, Derek, you've been doing this a long time. You're a 4-time Pro Bowler. You know how to play in this league at a high level consistently. What advice would you give us? What would you tell them, knowing what you know now, if you were entering the league?
Yeah, I would say, two things. One is you got to trust the process. It's, when it's early on, go out there and just cut it loose. Cut it loose. Figure out what you can get away with. Try your best to read the coverages. Try your best to see it, because they're going to be fooled. They're going to be disguised. You saw last year with Houston, they did a fantastic job with CJ of running the football, giving him play actions, easy reads, and then when he had to drop back, the percentage of how many times he had to drop back and make a crazy throw or anything was lower because of the way they played. And I think that helped him get introduced to the game. And I think CJ can do it all. I think he can drop back 100 times and throw the ball. But I thought they did a great job of letting him learn the process of the NFL game behind a great offensive line and a run game. Then you saw, as the season went on, they started trusting him with more dropbacks. They started trusting him with more deep shots and all this kind of stuff. And you saw him flourish because of the process that he went through. So trusting that process of, hey, you may not have all the keys at once, but you saw a perfect example with CJ last year, who I think the world of. They slowed him into it, and then boom, it just took off. And the sky's the limit for them now, because his confidence is all-time high. They know what they have and all that kind of stuff.
So do you think, is that more setting him up for success? Was it more of that success he had in his rookie season? Was it more about him, or was it more about the circumstances and how they set him up for success, or is it a combo?
It's definitely a combo, but he's still got to go make the throws. Don't get me wrong. He's got to go make the throws. He's got to make the reads, and he did it. For me, my rookie year, we didn't have, early on in the season, the best run game. So my offensive player was like, look, man, we're going to drop back. And he would tell me, just cut it loose, man. He's like, if you make a mistake, don't worry about it. Just cut it loose. And so it's a combination of both. It could be, you have a really good this or a really good that. And I felt like he handled everything so perfectly, not turning the ball over as a rookie, not, forcing bad decisions. And I thought he did so good last year. And I think that it was a combination of him just being a great player and them realizing he's great, but let's ease him into it at the beginning.
If you were a GM, you're the exec, who would you take? Who's your favorite QB out of this rookie class coming into the league? Is it evident to you, the number one guy?
That's tough. I don't know if it's just clear cut. Just watching college football, it's hard to say with college football because I could run around and scramble and do things in college football that's really tough to do in the NFL game. The throwing on time. When the first read's there, second read is there. Getting the ball out on time. It's hard to see that in the college game because the pass rush is different. A lot of things are different, and so. For me, I don't know. Caleb is a crazy talent. You look at him and you're like, he makes some of these throws and it's just really fun to watch. And Drake is a big body. He's an athlete that people don't give him enough credit for. He can throw it. You got Jaden from Louisiana, and I think he's unbelievable. I just love him. I love watching him play. Me and my boys, we were rooting for him every Saturday. This past year, being in Louisiana, they love LSU right now, so we were rooting for him. And you got Penix, you got JJ, who's a winner. He's tough. He runs, he can throw. He's very accurate. There's so many. If I don't name somebody, they're going to be upset. So I'm going to stop naming them. But there's so many good talents. But everyone's going to have a chance if they want a quarterback. You got 5, 6 guys that can all go in the first round in the top 15 picks, which is crazy this year. So it's going to be interesting.
Thank you, Derek Carr. Guys, coming up after a short break, we're actually going to be reflecting on Derek Carr, DC, and seeing how you feel about his time as a quarterback with the Raiders. That's after the break. All right, welcome back, everybody. All right, so we're going to be diving in, taking a larger look at really Derek Carr's time with the Raiders and how he's going to be remembered. Producer James, tell us, what are the people at home saying?
So I got a couple here for you. This first one from Eddie Flores on Facebook. He says, quote, as a great quarterback with an inconsistent organization with constant changes that could not bring him a good offense and defense to work with. Victor Knight on Facebook follows that up with, fallen short due to too many coaches / offensive coordinators. That's how those two are going to remember Derek Carr's time with the Raiders.
Interesting. Victor, I think, is saying something smart there. What do you think, James?
I would have to agree with Victor. I think that a lot of Derek Carr's time with the Raiders came with just constant turnover. And he had 4 head coaches in 9 seasons there. And it felt like a lot of times to me watching it that Derek Carr was the raft that kept those teams afloat. And I'm as big of a Derek Carr fan as any. I think that at one point you could have won a Super Bowl with Derek Carr. And so when I look back on Derek Carr's time with the Raiders, and I think about that constant turnover and how he was like the one constant, it feels like a big disappointment for me because they had their franchise guy, and letting him go felt like a mistake to me.
Yeah, especially when it was, for a Jimmy Garoppolo type of situation. Right. Tell us, James, what else are people saying at home?
This next one is from Richard. He says, quote, as a failure. And Ernie Desai on Facebook follows that up with, after looking at Garoppolo, Carr looks like a cross between Johnny Unitas and Peyton Manning. That's a heck of a comment.
Yeah, Ernie's being funny there. Listen, I'm a big Derek Carr guy as well. I personally think he's better. I feel like I'm living in an alternate universe because I remember when Kirk Cousins and the fanfare surrounding him wasn't so special. Now it sounds like everybody's like, well, Kirk Cousins is such a great quarterback. I'd take Derek Carr over Kirk Cousins. I think Carr's way more talented. As a second-round pick coming out of Fresno State in 2014, I think you got to look at his career and say, this is a guy who's been a franchise quarterback who certainly proved and displayed tremendous ability at the quarterback position, which is probably the hardest position in all of sports. So to me, he's a successful guy, a successful quarterback, and in the right circumstances, he could have had a much different career. Don't you feel the same way, James?
100%. I think a lot of success when it comes to the quarterback position is tied into circumstance.
Right.
Like Patrick Mahomes. If he goes to Chicago
right.
instead of Kansas City and Andy Reid, what does his career look like? What does Mitch Trubisky's career look like if he falls to 10 and he goes to Kansas City and Andy Reid? So it's all circumstance. And I think Derek Carr was super talented. Do I think he is now what he was with the Raiders? Not necessarily.
Yeah.
He threw for, I find this very interesting. The year before Josh McDaniels got there, He threw for 4,800 yards, a 68% completion percentage, and a 10-7 record. This is the year that Gruden stepped down, and he led that team to the playoffs.
Yeah.
He stays 1 year, falls off a bit under McDaniels, and then they let him walk in bringing Garoppolo, and it felt like giving away a franchise quarterback for nothing.
Yeah, that's when things were really clicking with Hunter Renfrow, Waller. I mean, it was a different kind of thing. So it's a shame, but listen, we love Derek Carr. We thank him for coming on the show. He's a very good dude, family man, and we wish him a lot of success in the Big Easy. Guys, coming up after a short break, we got more SOS for you. Stick around. All right, welcome back to Sound Off Sports. James, I can't get over this Stephon Diggs trade. You got to remember, they don't even have Gabe Davis anymore. So Josh Allen, a franchise quarterback in his prime, he's going to throw to two tight ends, Dawson Knox and Kincaid. I mean, what are they doing here? What's the thought process? They're just going to give up and wait till next year?
I am not in that organization, so it's hard to read their minds about what they're looking to do here. But like you mentioned earlier, it does feel like they're trying to get younger. But as far as a weapon standpoint, and you're absolutely right, when you have a guy like Josh Allen in his prime, you kind of cleared out that offense, and it's devoid of weapons seemingly now. We'll see what they do in the draft, but you do have Kincaid, you still have James Cook, and those are two really solid guys at the tight end and running back position. But it is interesting to see how the Bills are handling not getting over that Chiefs hump this year.
They're basically imploding. And that defense that was so tough and a storied defense, that's completely over too. So I don't know what they're doing. We all know Stephon Diggs wanted out. It's hard when a player wants out, but still it's not a good day, good week for the Bills Mafia. Guys, thanks so much for joining us. We love hearing from you. Make sure you give us your thoughts. You sound off. We'll see you next time on SOS.